So Nick, you're electric now. You can't charge at home through a fast charge point.
No.
Just doing it kind of trickle charge through 3-pin plug, and they're absolutely perfect for your needs. What do you think is holding people back from going electric today?
Availability, cost, and probably perception, which actually not probably, definitely people's perception of EVs doesn't reflect reality.
Yes.
You know, they are proper cars. They're not, it's not like playing Scalextrics or driving a Formula One car. You know, there's the analogy. One is electric and it's little and it's plastic. The other one is a high performance machine. Well, so are EVs these days. You know, even in the 5 years that I've been driving EVs, they've come on so much, and the price is coming down, but that still excludes a lot of people. It's predominantly price and perception. You know, you can go out and pick up a second-hand petrol car for a couple of grand. You can't do that on an EV.
It's interesting actually. So I've just bought my daughter her first car. She is 17 next month, and I've bought her an old Leaf. And in all honesty, it is slightly more. I've bought her a 2018 Leaf, and it is slightly more than if I bought her a petrol or diesel version.
Yep.
But it's something like about £800 more. That's the difference. And she's going to charge at home. We pay 7.5p per kilowatt, so it's going to cost me, not cost her. Cost me probably about £4, if that, £4 for her to charge a car for 130 miles in that particular car. It's still got 130 usable miles in the battery, so that's as far as I actually want my daughter to go. So that's quite good.
And then of course some people would say a longer range is better for your family.
It depends, to be honest, on what day it is. You know, she's a 17-year-old girl, so
I want at least 500-mile range.
But then that's a further headache, because then when she goes 500 miles, she's completely lost, doesn't know how to get back, and I have to find her. It's that old. The old cost differential, I think, is a big problem, because if I look back at my first car, I don't know what yours was. I bought a £50 Metro from the back of a local paper, and obviously we're a million miles away from that point at the moment.
I can remember exactly what my first car was.
Yeah.
It was a Mark III Ford Cortina, and I paid £175 for it.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, it used to cost about £10 to drive 100 miles. And the last petrol car that wasn't a high performance car also cost about £10 for 100 miles.
Yeah, that's nuts.
You know, fuel price went through the roof, but actually mileage that you get went through the roof as well.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot more expensive than I pay now.
Yeah, because I remember it was probably 20 years ago that petrol broke that £1 per litre mark, and everybody was rioting, it was blocking refineries, it was just nuts everywhere. 15 years ago, I think it was, 15 years ago, that type of time. And everybody was like, this can't be allowed to go on, but of course it's just gone on and on and on. And unless you're in electric, you kind of just tied into it. I think the resource is getting more scarce.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder. But I think that's one challenge. I think the challenge is just for people who don't have access to schemes like ours.
Yeah, access is a big challenge. You know, if every employer realised that it doesn't cost them anything to provide, then there are still people who are on living wage or that kind of level that can't take part in the scheme.
Yeah.
But outside that, the majority of people, you know, you've got to realise that second to your mortgage or your rent, the most expensive thing on a monthly basis that most people pay for is their transport costs.
Yeah.
Whether they just get a bus and then train into London, or whether they drive 10 miles or 1,000 miles, buying the kit for it is expensive. And anything you can do to reduce that cost, an employer should do.
Yeah.
Especially, as I say, if there's no financial risk to the company, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a question from an HR perspective. A lot of people would come to providers like you and say, right, tell me, why should I join your scheme? Why should I put a salary sacrifice scheme in so that all of my staff can drive cheaper? Seems a bit odd.
Yeah.
It should be you
Why
asking
wouldn't
them, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions there as well. So a lot of people think it is for kind of people at our level who traditionally always have that brand new car every 3 years. Whereas for reality, I think for 80% of people who take product from us, it's their first ever new car.
Yeah.
Because they've got a 10-year-old Astra. They can give that up, and for the same money as it's cost them to keep that on the road, they can have something like, not anything exotic, but something like an MG4 or a Renault or something of that nature.
I mean, my first brand new car was a company car.
Yeah.
And for most people, that's the case, or for a lot of people, that's the case. EVs didn't exist in those days, so every month you complained about how much tax you're paying on the value of your car.
Yeah.
And looking back a few, probably only 3 or 4 years, then the availability of vehicles was limited to people in middle management, senior management positions, because when anything first comes out, they're really expensive. I can remember microwaves being well over 100 quid. Now you can pick one up in Tesco's for 20 quid.
Yeah.
So the same thing over time, the cost of vehicles will come down, so more people can access them. And it's that access, if it can be helped by providing them cheaper, then, as I said earlier, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. The other big headache, and it's one which winds me up no end, is just charging at home. So it's charging at home, not necessarily for people who don't have a charge point like yourself, but people who just can't because of ridiculous legislation, because of very backward councils not getting behind these initiatives. It's for 40% of us that can't actually charge at home. It's just having a solution for those guys.
Yeah, you're right, but you've got the two different perspectives there. The idea that there are no chargers or there's not a big charging network in rural areas. In rural areas, almost everyone's got a driveway, so you can put a charger in it, or you can use a trickle charger. In cities, there are more terraces, there are more apartments where you haven't got access to a charger, but actually you don't need to drive as much. So you charge it less frequently, you're still getting the same benefit from using it.
Kind of. I think it's just the price you're paying for electricity, that's the challenge. Because if you go to a lamppost charger, you're going to pay maybe 40p.
No, but all our fuel bills are coming down soon, aren't they?
Of course they are. So it's 40p a kilowatt a lamppost charger, but then of course if you can manage to tag into your home electric, and the solutions out there to allow people to do it, but just the governments or the local authorities just won't sign them off and won't be proactive about it.
Lamppost chargers, just as an aside, I used to go up to London a lot. A week, a month I'd spend it with clients in London, and the amount of times I've walked up residential streets and every lamppost has got a charger built in, and every parking space is taken up with petrol or diesel. It's all very well being able to put chargers in positions and allow people access to a charger, but you've got to allow them to access the chargers.
But then when we're digging up these curb sites every 10 years, I remember being at a conference on sustainable transport in Birmingham back in 2019, and you looked around from this high-rise building, they were digging up absolutely everywhere, and there was no thought about, while we're digging this up, let's just put some infrastructure in for people to charge. And until I think central governments start actually saying you've got to do this and kind of whitelisting certain providers like Charge Gully or other types of solution, I think until something comes from central powers, I don't think anything will ever change.
No, I mean, out of town charge hubs, if you like, there are options for ones that wouldn't need access to the biggest or the bigger infrastructure. You've got solar charge or solar powered chargers now. Sooner or later there'll be wind powered chargers, which would be brilliant in Cornwall. There are options that are coming up, but again, it's part perception of access to charging and part is genuinely access to charging. It's all very well having 30 chargers on a motorway services, which is an expensive way of charging, but sometimes it's the most convenient and the only option.
Yeah.
But actually, how many? Once or twice I've turned up at the services and there's been no access. Probably longest I've waited is about 15 minutes.
It brings us back, sorry to interrupt, but it brings us back to perception. Because I remember they had the same graphic going this Christmas, but last Christmas there's lots of graphics around Gretna Green, and Tesla's just piling in one after the other, a queue of maybe 20 of them around the roundabout. And because I know what I'm doing with electric cars, I literally just opens that map, had a look at the app, and Abingdon, which is another 30 miles north or something like that, loads of availability.
Yeah.
And it's just all the perception. I feel that because the government have kind of said to people, you've got to go electric, there's a certain demographic, and to be brutally honest, if I hadn't gone electric when I did, I'll probably be part of this demographic that are thinking like, screw you, you're not going to tell me what to do, you know, I'm going to do what I want. And I think for that demographic, the best thing the government could do is actually just rein back and say, we want people to move, we incentivise people to move, and use the incentive system like salary sacrifice, like other things.
Yeah, look, you know, there are incentives around their EV grants or discounts now, but at the same time as that, they introduce a BOK tax on them. You know, and
a
sooner or later,
we'll
we'll be paying more road tax.
Yeah.
You know, purely because the government still need their 80p out of a pound.
Yeah.
You know, they'll get their money somehow, and if everyone adopts EVs, then they'll have to find ways of charging.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll lose a shed load of revenue. And I sort of understand that. I really do. But if you want to encourage people to drive cleaner, to drive more efficiently, to drive more sustainably, what's the option?
And to be honest, even if you take aside salary sacrifice and just look at people who buy cars, now it's like all over the new Chinese product. I think some of it's very, very good. They got well ahead of the game, I feel, when the new product was coming out, when the electric product was coming out. But some of the new Chinese products especially, it's the same price to buy as a petrol or diesel equivalent. You know, you look at the MG4, you compare it to a similar spec Astra, it's virtually the same cost. You look at my wife's Enyaq, when she bought that, I think it was about £1,500 more expensive than petrol or diesel Enyaq, but literally it costs her £300 to fuel for a 3-year period. So actually, you look at the whole life savings, it's significantly cheaper. So hopefully the cost objections are going away, even aside from schemes like ours.
Yeah, and the Chinese companies got ahead of the game. I mean, they've got EVs that drive on water.
I'm not seeing it.
Oh yeah, it floats. It's like a car boat,
wow.
but it looks like a normal car. I could have done with that in Cornwall a couple of weeks ago, but you know, there are options out there. In the market, the more product you produce, then the cheaper you can produce individual products.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's that economy of scale. But whether or not manufacturers and the big manufacturers, not necessarily in volume, but big name manufacturers, will ever stop building petrol and diesel cars, I don't know. I'm not convinced they ever would.
No, they don't want to. That's one problem.
No, there needs to be an option.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, there are still types of EV that don't exist, but do exist in petrol.
Yeah.
So if you want a specific type of vehicle, that's your only option.
Well, towing, as an example.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got, my daughters have got ponies. Sometimes it's more like my ponies than theirs, especially when there's jobs to do.
But bills to pay.
And bills to pay. but yeah, it's like, as soon as you hitch something up to so I do have an electric car. I've got an e-tron, not the e-tron GT, because I remember my daughter seeing the e-tron GT zoom past us on the A38, saying, "Oh God, Dad, look at that! Why didn't you get one of those?" And I pointed behind and said, "Because of that bloody thing attached to the car, the horse trailer." But it lowers your range by half, and there's not an easy solution for that, you know.
No, well, there is an easy solution. You put an electric motor in trailers.
Yeah, I guess so. I've not even thought about that.
That's the simplest solution. You either convert existing horse trailers or normal load trailers by putting a motor in them, and then ringing them up in series. So you know, EVs don't just have one electric motor in all the time, and they all run at the same speed.
Or a bigger battery.
Or a big
So a
battery.
battery trailer with a big solar panel on
Yeah.
the roof.
Yeah. Yeah, you can only use that
Which
for 3
obviously
weeks a year though.
Don't know what you mean, it's glorious today. But yeah,
It stopped raining, that's what you mean, isn't it?
it's a different shade of grey.
Midlands glorious.
Thank you, Nick.